From rich and diverse culture to breathtaking scenery, Inner Mongolia is a place which has much to offer for tourism and IB students alike. Being the third largest Chinese province with over 1.1 million square kilometers and 24 million people in its current population, Inner Mongolia's climate has very long periods of freezing temperatures going as far as minus 15 degrees, and chilly winds, which makes it an adventurous location for those who dislike the cold. Within Baotou, one of the most famous locations is the Wudang Tao Lama Monastery, which includes 3 living Buddha residences. Overall, the location of Baotou is nothing short of varied from its desert-like dunes to temples inside the mountains. As we will now see, this trip showed all the place had to offer and some things that were left only for us to discover. During this trip, we wish nothing only to explore Mongolia and witness its beautiful scenery, but also to achieve balance in all 3 Kazakstans by taking part in various organized events.
The Engebe Desert covers 18,000 square kilometers and is the middle section of the Kubichi Desert of Ordos. The desert is hot during the day and much cooler at night. During the tour through the Desert Museum, we had gained a vast amount of knowledge about the flora and fauna as well as the history of nomadic tribes and the volunteering efforts of people to fight desertification. Throughout this tour, global engagement and open-mindedness played a big role as we were made aware of the threatening issues of desertification. The desert itself has patches of grass with plants and shrubs. There is a wide range of medical herbs found in the Engebe Desert. These include ginseng roots, goji berries, and many more. The flora in Inner Mongolian deserts is very resilient due to the fact that roots reach down as deep as 13 meters into the ground, such as sacasols, allowing it to absorb vital resources for survival. The fauna within the Inner Mongolian desert ranges from small species, such as lizards, to large mammals, such as camels. When pursuing our service part of the trip, we have been made aware that our 6th learning objective, which covers our engagement with the world on a global scale, can be completed by our afforestation efforts by creating habitats for animals through planting trees. In the Desert Museum, we learned about real-life examples of afforestation failures as it showed us the reality of the difficult environment, human, and social challenges the volunteers at the Engebe Desert have learned from the past few years and based their afforestation efforts on revised editions of newer afforestation methods. As IB students, it is important to reflect on the efficiency of our service actions.
Due to climate change, desertification is becoming a greater threat, impacting not only the natural environment, but the animals and people who depend on these as well. Desertification is a process by which fertile land becomes desert, and in China, it's been caused by overfarming and too much mining. It currently affects 400 million people, and it's likely that that number will grow in the future. It's not only a problem in China, but all around the world. In fact, throughout the past 40 years, the Earth has lost 1/3 of its fertile land to erosion and degradation. That land was used for agriculture and food supply. We visited Inner Mongolia, an area faced with the problem of desertification due to the growing Engebe Desert. The effects of desertification are not only local, but also felt all the way in Beijing, which is often attacked by sandstorms from the deserts in between China and Mongolia. This causes a great deal of sand to blow into the city, affecting both the infrastructure, such as railway services, and the health of citizens, as sand blows into their mouth and eyes.
China has been building a Great Green Wall around the Gobi Desert since 1978, and since then 4,500 kilometers of land have been covered by 66 billion trees, with the project aimed to end by 2050. It's estimated that just 2% of China's original forests are intact, which is why the country needs action to be taken against desertification starting now. However, just 15% of the trees planted on China's dry land since 1949 survive today due to the dryness of the land they're planted on, not allowing them to grow, which is why there are so many ongoing debates on whether the Great Green Wall is a sustainable project or not, also because of the increasing cost of planting trees. As part of our service outreach in Project Week, we worked with a charity called Roots and Shoots and planted trees in areas where fertile ground is turning into desert and creating potential risks of sandstorms. Their action against desertification also have close links with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. For example, zero hunger and climate action, which means our contribution links to something bigger that's helping our Earth.
Before Project Week, we took part in many fundraising events around school in order to achieve our LO2, which consists of initiative and planning, and managed to gather enough money to buy 160 trees to plant. The planting of these trees took up a whole day, and digging the holes Carrying the trees and replanting them, as well as taking out the dead ones, was very hard work. It was physically challenging work, and much of it required us to ask for help as it was a new experience. But with time and practice, we became faster and more productive, meanwhile achieving our LO1 strength and growth. At the end, we all felt that it was very much worth it when we saw the change we had made in that small space of land, and during the day we also achieved LOs 5 and 6 as we all pushed until the very end and overcame the initial challenges of the experience by learning new skills. Working on this project also brought us closer together and allowed us to reach our LO4 of collaborative skills and helped us better understand some of the problems, such as desertification, that are facing our world today.
Sand sliding. As a part of the activity aspect of our project week, Inside Adventures organized sand sledding in the Ngobe Desert. The steep dune, approximately 30 meters in height, was selected. For all of us, this was a new experience, so we were a little anxious when we stood at the top of the sand dune and peered over the ridge downwards. It struck us as a long and steep way down. This experience definitely required us to be risk takers. We each took turns to tuck ourselves into the compact plastic sledges and help give each other initial push over the edge. Some of us gained more momentum than others. Some of us had more balance than others. It took us several attempts to get a feel for the plastic sledges and the angle of the slope to be able to slide down straight at the bottom, and a certain amount of restraint from not sticking our legs out to slow us down from the front. We had to learn to overcome our nerves and embrace speed to be able to rush down the slope in one smooth motion. Soon fears turned into sun, and we started to set new challenges for ourselves. We started to build ramps on the slope. We also challenged ourselves to try sliding down, standing up rather than sitting down. Also to slide down head first on our stomachs or feet first on our backs. We challenged ourselves to even slide down backwards. As each challenge increased in difficulty level, it took perseverance and commitment to be successful. Sliding down was one thing, but climbing 30 meters back up the dune with our sled in tow was a true workout. Reconstructing the sand ramps also took collaboration and required clear communication to get the height and angle correct. We had to remain open-minded, to accept different ideas on how we build different ramps, but also when setting and accepting different challenges set for each other. Naturally, we had to consider safety before adrenaline rushes. Overall, this activity was great fun, and it definitely allowed us to discover more about ourselves as we continuously aimed to challenge new limits.
On November 2nd, we took part in an activity to sharpen our survival skills. We learned the basics of building a dugout in the desert. Our instructors gave us tips to building a good dugout that will withstand high wind and rain. We learned that we should build the dugout on the lower side of the sand dune against wind so that it would not be affected by strong wind that often hits during sandstorms. We watched the instructor demonstrate, took mental notes as he dug a good dugout. When it was our turn, we showed initiative and planning as we drew a rough sketch on the sand, roughly the size of a tarp given to us. Then we used collaborative skills and divided the labor that each of us, 4 of us, took one side to dig. This maximized productivity. We use our hands to dig the hole by pushing the sand away from our palms. This is a method taught by our instructor. After a while of digging, we created a hole deep and wide enough. We then covered it with the tarp and reinforced it with rocks and sand so it won't be blown off easily. Lastly, we tested the quality of our dugout by crawling in and taking shelter. It turned out successfully as the tarp held in place and there was enough space underneath to fit 2 or 3 of us.
The Wudangjiao Lama Monastery is a Tibetan Buddhist monastery situated 70 kilometers northeast of the city Baotou in Inner Mongolia, China. It is the biggest and best preserved Lama Monastery in the region. Lama Monastery is its Tibetan name, meaning white lotus. Wudangjiao in Mongolian means willow because willows once populated the valley in which the Lama Monastery is situated. The monastery was built in the Tibetan style. It is a sprawling complex of white, ochre, and burgundy buildings, housing prayer rooms, exhibition halls, homes, shrines, and a communal open space on the hills. The white monastery stands out against the background of the green trees, making it appear very majestic. The Wudangjiao Monastery originally had over 1,200 resident monks, but these numbers have dwindled to but a few, leaving the 2,500-room complex active, but filled mainly by tourists and believers. The complex was built in 1749 and covers a total area of approximately 50 acres. It has been home to a number of living Buddhas, 7 of whose ashes have been deposited in one of the main halls. The main buildings in the monastery are composed of 6 halls, 3 living Buddha residences, and a funeral hall where the relics of several living Buddhas are preserved. The floors are covered with red carpet and the walls are covered with the colorful paintings depicting Buddhist stories. We inquired about the history of the monastery, reflecting on the symbolism of the lotus and the willow, which gave name to the Wudangjiao Monastery. After talking to the guide, we became more knowledgeable as we started to be able to answer questions we had to complete in order to check our understanding of the local culture. We worked collaboratively to complete tasks and preserved to walk up the highest point of the monastery, which challenged our skills. After the tour of the monastery, we reflected on the day and looked back at the importance of engaging on a global level with different cultures. The International Baccalaureate aims to develop inquiring, knowledgeable, and caring young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through intercultural understanding and respect. Through the visit in the Wudangjiao Monastery, we became more conscious of other cultures, which helped us to become more globally aware and ethical individuals who understand the importance of respecting other beliefs and different points of view to grow as global citizens in the world.